Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Bowman, Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Brain. I want to welcome you to this special presentation on navigating a volatile environment, a software approach to warehouse performance improvements presented by Lucas Systems. One quick note, there will be an audience question and answer session at the end of this presentation, so audience members should feel encouraged to submit their questions at any time during the presentation by clicking on that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Now, just when market volatility caused by the pandemic is showing signs of easing, along comes higher inflation, interest rate hikes, and fears of a recession. And that has caused a lot of major warehouse automation projects, including conveyor, racking systems, and robots, to be put on hold. But there is a better and faster way, through adoption of optimization software that can improve efficiency and attract and retain the next generation of warehouse workers. Today, we're going to talk about why a WMS alone will not get you there, and how layering in optimization software can provide quick ROI, dramatic productivity, and reduction in labor costs. With that, I want to introduce our speaker for today. Kyle Franklin is a senior solution consultant with Lucas Systems. He leads solution design and implementation in the US, EMEA, and Asia Pacific regions, helping to transform and optimize distribution center operations worldwide. Prior to Lucas, Kyle held roles in international logistics and warehousing for global logistics providers. So with that, I'd like to pass it over to Kyle Franklin for his presentation. Kyle, take it away.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. And thank you all for joining me today on this Supply Chain Brain webinar. Today, we're going to talk about how we can achieve double-digit gains in RDCs without investing in complex and expensive automation and robotics. It fits into large, medium, and even smaller DC operations. It can integrate with nearly any existing WMS or ERP, no matter how old. And best yet, it usually pays for itself in less than 12 months. All right. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Lucas. Lucas Systems has been creating solutions to improve execution in warehouse environments for a long time. In fact, we celebrated our 25th anniversary at the beginning of this year. In that time, Lucas team members have walked through thousands of warehouses, learning from each of them how to combine the latest and greatest in the technology with process improvements to make life easier for DC workers, managers, and organizations. We're currently installed in over 500 warehouses across the world. Also, we are pioneers in voice recognition and leveraging AI-based applications for industrial warehouse usage. We were the first vendor to deploy on non-proprietary multimodal devices and the first to deliver voice solutions on Android, including smartwatches and smartphones. In the past 5 years, the focus has been on software solutions for on-the-floor process optimization. So, for those of us in the distribution business has been booming, right? The high cost of inventory and the shift to online buying, those still in the brick and mortar retail business need to reduce their costs, mostly through lower real estate and inventory holding costs. This has led to retail replenishment orders becoming smaller and more frequent. With the continued growth of direct fulfillment, the omni-channel distribution center has become a must. Grocery retailers and others have moved towards micro-fulfillment centers. All of these changes has resulted in the distributor being more crucial to the supply chain than ever before. However, all of these opportunities also create challenges, right? Inflation coupled with longer lead times are placing a larger burden of increased inventory holding costs squarely on the distributor. With this, it becomes more important than ever to closely manage procurement, transportation, and inventory levels. The Amazon effect has made it so that everyone in direct fulfillment has to ship a very high percentage of their orders same day or next day, putting an even further strain on these resources. Then, of course, the biggest problem of all, the elephant in the room, not enough qualified warehouse workers to maintain adequate service levels. So what's the solution? How can we solve this labor problem? It's not going away anytime soon, right? So here are four, but really three solutions that we can look at. Increase worker retention by making the job easier to do and easier to learn. Optimize your existing processes to get increased throughput without increasing workload. And then adding automation opportunistically to reduce labor requirements. So first, I'd like to go through and share some insights, including recommendations for attracting and retaining a future workforce with unique attitudes towards loyalty, work-life balance, and workplace satisfaction. Lucas conducted a Voice of the Warehouse Worker survey along with a third party to try and gain insights into the current DC workforce. We found many interesting insights. Like, for instance, 73% of the Gen Z workforce would welcome robots and would think that it would make their jobs easier to perform and be more accurate at. Another insight we found was that workers would trade additional pay if they felt like they had access to great technology and worked in a great environment. These are all signs that tomorrow's warehouses will need to operate differently than they do today. Gen Z workers expect to use modern technologies like they use at home. Handheld, personalized tech must also be easy to use and must help save them time and mitigate exertion. These insights have led us to 4 strategies to attract and retain workers. You want to create an environment that wins the worker, first and foremost. Invest in automation that benefits and advances the on-floor worker. Commit to intuitive and evolutionary tech. And reimagine the warehouse division of labor. So let's go in a little bit more detail how we do that. So like I said, we want to make the job easier to do and learn with intuitive high-tech applications. First and foremost in our drive to maximize the effectiveness of this human workforce is to make that job easy. Voice-directed applications, which incorporate complementary technologies like barcode scanning, visual cues, both on-screen and connected cues like lights, have proven to be the most effective method to train and retain hourly associates. Ideally, the same technology and methodology can be applied across multiple DC processes, not just picking, but also order consolidation and sorting, inbound handling like receiving and put away, pick bin replenishment, cycle counting, truck loading, you name it. So we're going to go through a few examples of how applying intelligent voice-based applications to warehouse processes has provided improvement for our customers. When you can make a warehouse associate's job easier to get it right, they have higher job satisfaction and tend to stay longer. You'll get such results like labor need reductions, reduction of errors, throughput increases, paper eliminated, and all with a relatively light touch. A good example of this is the Sportsman Guide, an e-tailer in St. Paul, Minnesota. They received a 18% productivity gain with an increase in accuracy for implementing the Lucas solution. We'll show a quick video to give them their story from their words.
Sportsman's Guide is an e-retailer, so we service all the hunter and fishermen in the United States, camping, anything for the outdoors. My name is Jason Klum. I oversee warehouse operations at the Sportsman's Guide. Yeah, the Sportsman's Guide has been around for over 40 years, so we started off as a catalog company where we were sending literally millions of catalogs out on a weekly basis. You know, years ago, we made the shift over to be more of an online e-tailer. So our catalog business has dropped down significantly, but majority of our business, it's in the high 80%, is coming via the web now. So we've seen a nice business growth. Obviously, a lot of online e-tailers seen a significant boost in business, and we can see that business continuing to grow over the next few years.
My name is Jerry Marcotte.
I am the outbound supervisor in charge of picking, packing, and shipping. So this warehouse is roughly 330,000 square feet of racking space.
347.
Pick 1.
Grab 1.
9 alpha. Put 1.
354. Put 1.
We have typically around 30,000 plus SKUs.
At HQ, we're doing on average about 8,000 orders a day. There's about 1.5 pieces per order. So we're up over that 12,000 pieces a day. And that's during this time of the year. Coming into peak season, we're gonna about 2.5 times that volume out of this facility. The biggest vision for the Sportsman's Guide is we wanna be fast to the customer, and then we wanna be accurate, right? You know, so if you walk around the DC here, you're gonna see a lot of signage that says, "The satisfied customer with every package," and that's our motto. So Jennifer helped us meet these expectations by increasing our productivity. So when we launched with Jennifer, we've seen an 18% in productivity gain. And then also we've seen a nice increase in our accuracy.
Jennifer does everything for us but reach out and grab the product. She sends us to the locations, tells us where to grab from, how many to grab, where to put it on our cart. She won't let you make a mistake. If you're at the wrong location, she will tell you invalid.
I love work with Jennifer because it's more easy, because she told me everything I had to do every day.
So much nicer because you don't have to mess around with anything. She tells you where to go, what to do, and it's much simpler.
199,
199 invalid. 698 11.
198, grab 3.
Pick 3. Put 7 alpha.
When you're bringing in seasonal associates, it's just that training that needs to occur, right? So with the increase in productivity, we've seen a decrease in our training labor, which has helped significantly.
It should only take a few hours. Some people take a whole day. Some people need extra help. It just depends on the person. Some people will learn in 2 hours and get it going right away.
Where we've seen a nicer jump in accuracy was actually from the seasonal staff. So the seasonal staff was running about 98%, 98.9% accuracy. And then once we got them trained on the Lucas system, that went up to about 99.5.
I cannot imagine going back to the old way we used to do things, picking by visual paper.
We built our application together around our process. And that's one of the reasons why we went with Lucas.
It's better with Jennifer.
So Sportsman's Guide is a great customer of ours, a great story for sure. They're using those carts to do batch picking of orders across their DC. That's where a lot of their gains have come from. A lot of people think that batch picking is limited to very small items, very small orders, but as you can see, hopefully got a chance to see in the video, you're picking pretty large carts, pretty big order sizes, pretty big products, especially things, for hunting and fishing gear, it tends to be bulkier. So we can apply a lot of these methodologies to pretty much, any warehouse environment or outbound operation. So we'll take you through that in more detail here as well. So now that you've seen a little bit of Sportsman's Guide, and if picture yourself, you're like them now, you've added voice directed applications to the warehouse. You're using other technologies to help the job make it easy for their associates, right, to do their jobs with the highest accuracy. You've added technology to support their processes, like applying scanning to inbound and outbound when necessary, right? Being selective about it, using lightweight mobile devices with users are comfortable with. You're using voice direction for picking, but then also other workflows like replenishment and put away. And you might even be using mobile label printing or smart label application. Now let's take the next step. Let's look at how you can use AI and smart software to help optimize the process. Your associates will still do the task the same way, but the software has smartened up the task in order to save steps. The first place to look for this is in smart batching, the opportunity to do more than one task per trip throughout the DC. I'll now take you through a brief rundown of how Lucas approaches this challenge using our dynamic work optimization module. It directly attacks the travel challenge by attacking a key slice of any order picking operation, which is travel. It uses three main components to reduce travel around the warehouse: dynamic prioritization, pick path optimization, and intelligent batching. AI-based dynamic work optimization combines smart batching with pick path reduction, to provide game-changing productivity gains. The smart batching software also takes into account order priority, so you can achieve the right balance between pick density, yielding the highest productivity, with making sure that you still make your gate times for orders which may have come in late, but must be picked today. So we want to try to balance that out whenever possible. So now that we know which order to pick based on our prioritization engine, let's take a look at how we can pick each one faster. Consider the following warehouse map and visual pick list. The blue dots are individual picks for a single order, all of which must need to be picked by our picker there next to the start. Now we see their pick path, a standard serpentine pick sequence. The user will traverse each aisle that has picks in it, and in most cases, traveling the entire length of the aisle. In this case, they would have traveled about 934 feet to pick this order. All of this travel is mostly wasted, right? There's very few picks there. There's large sections of the map that have few or no picks in them. We can pick them much more efficiently by resequencing the pick list to reduce total travel. Now, let's look at the path generated by our pick path optimization engine. It uses a number of traveling salesman mathematical algorithms sourced by our team of data scientists. Now we see we have significantly reduced travel time for our picker by resequencing the picks. Instead of picking those items at the bottom of our map in aisle sequence, we save a ton of time by grabbing those at the very end. This results in an estimated savings of 18% for this order. Now we figured out the fastest way to pick an individual order. One of the key ways that warehouses can save on travel is by batch picking orders. We now see a group of the next available orders in the system overlaid on our map. With it, we see the pick path generated by our engine to pick order number 1, the highest priority order in the system, traveling a distance of 432 feet. Most warehouses batch in a first in, first out method. So when we add order number 1, we want to add order number 2 into our batch in order to pick it. Picking both together results in a total travel of 704 feet, which is much shorter than if they had picked them separately. However, we think there is a better way. Lucas's AI-based tool looks at the pick paths of all the orders we determine were eligible to help determine what the optimal batch is. Looking at the map, which order matches really well with our current pick path? If you look really closely and your screens are large enough, you can see order number 6 in green matches our pick path almost exactly, only requiring a small deviation from it to move forward. So now we've picked 2 orders within only 456 feet, significantly reducing our travel. Consider how much greater these benefits will be once we pick batches of 4, 8, or 20 orders, as many of our customers do. And to be clear, these batching techniques are equipment agnostic as well. We have customers using this technology on traditional batch picking carts, or double and triple pallet jacks, as you see on the right, or cages, or large carts pulled by tuggers like you saw in the Sportsman's Guide video. The point is, leveraging the software doesn't have to be hugely capital and equipment intensive. We most likely can use what you already have. So now that you understand a little bit about how the AI-based optimization engine looks at all the units of work that are waiting in queue and dynamically matches them with the best ones so that they have the highest pick density, resulting in overall travel time, it yields increased productivity. Let's take you through a couple examples of how this can be applied to your operation and what the results could be. We've looked at several very large operations in food distribution and also in tool and parts, and here are the results that we've seen. In this first example, the combination of intelligent batching and pick path optimization resulted in a travel savings of 29.5 feet, This is a double pallet picking operation. So we're trying to do best match for the second pallet. We don't want to limit this to best SKU match, as some videos in as some applications do. They just try to look for SKU overlap. We find we can apply better batching methodology and get more opportunities when we look at this total travel and travel map. And so using this application for this double pallet jack, we were able to have savings of about 29.5%. These numbers are dramatic, especially considering that many large organizations have already done everything they can to maximize the productivity of their associates, improve slotting, labor management, incentives. Even after all this, there's still additional ways to get double-digit benefits. Another example we'll show was a global manufacturer of professional and hand and power tools, and they utilized DWO to maximize their batch picking productivity. The solution replaced RF devices as well as pick-to-light technology with multimodal picking featuring voice direction. The results here included not only a dramatic error reduction, but a 50% reduction in labor in their pick-to-cart area, where 35% of the picking took place. By adding technology like voice direction and AI-based optimization, you can achieve huge gains and rapid ROI. We've made it really easy for associates to learn and do their tasks, and we've applied as much smart software as we can to make their jobs as efficiently as we can. You don't need a sophisticated WMS, you don't need expensive robots or heavy automation, and you don't need to break the bank. Most companies implementing these software solutions achieve ROI in less than 12 months. To go back to the front, we want to look at 3 levels of optimization opportunity to explore. We want to make the task as easy to do and easy to train using voice-directed applications. We want to optimize the units of work using smart batching, assignment creation, smart pick path AI-based solutions, along with other process improvements. And when possible, we can add AMRs along with optimization and orchestration software to maximize your worker productivity and further extend your operation. Lastly, the next level of optimization is to take the mundane tasks, which people may still be doing, like moving pick carts or running pallets, and let the machines do the task. We have the opportunity to further reduce travel time for units of work to go from one place to another, and we can look at the new breed of AMRs to accomplish this. There are a number of companies offering various flavors of AMRs, almost all positioned to be collaborative with your human workforce. However, you will still need optimization software to coordinate the collaboration of these AMRs with your human workforce, a process we now refer to as orchestration. And with that, I'd like to thank all of you for listening to me go on about this topic. I get very excited about it, and I think we can pass over to Bob to open up the floor for more questions.
Thank you so much, Kyle. That was a great presentation. And just to further dramatize the value of that AI-driven optimization, reducing travel time, you have alluded briefly to the so-called traveling salesman problem from which this originates. The idea is what is the most optimal route for a salesman to visit X number of sites? If there are 15 sites that salesman has to visit, there are more than 43 billion possibilities. Now, I'm not saying there are that many in the warehouse that you're talking about here, but certainly that shines a light on just how important it is to bring AI into the picture, a kind of a calculation algorithm no human being could possibly handle. So thank you very much for that. This is a great opportunity to bring the audience in. So audience members, we've already got some questions that we're going to ask Kyle, but as we are dealing with them, please continue to submit your questions and we will get to as many of them as possible, time permitting. Kyle, let me start with this one. And it's a pretty good one to start with. And that is, how can a specific distribution center gauge the potential savings to be achieved?
Yep, it's a great question. So you want to start first looking, casting your eyes upon the DC and start looking for waste, right? Is there any, you see, totes or boxes piling up in an area waiting for someone? Do you see someone confused as they're not sure what next prompt to go through on their RF gun, or they're waiting for something to come to them. Those are all opportunities for optimization, right? You want to make the job as easy as possible for users. So anytime where they have to make complex decisions, or they have to go run and check with someone, for instance, those are opportunities for sure. And then, if you put yourself in the shoes of a warehouse worker, are there a lot of things that you would want to be doing, right? Is it walking all over the warehouse? How can we reduce that? A lot of things can start with empathy, and that's a really good place to start to try to make the daily job easier, and that translates to savings and all the other things as well.
Thank you. This questioner is asking, is integrating a system like this with a WMS or an ERP, enterprise resource planning system, a straightforward process? I can just hear the screams of people who have tried to do that.
Yeah.
It doesn't, or does it require a significant investment of time and resources?
Yeah, it's a much lighter lift than a traditional WMS or ERP. A system like ours isn't a system of record. You don't have to load the inventory of thousands and thousands of SKUs into the system. So it's a much lighter touch. We're not as tightly integrated as some RF applications. So it's really send us data and we send confirmations back. And really all we need are your eyes and ears to help us look for those opportunities, and be willing to go and chase and find those opportunities for optimization, really.
Thank you. This questioner wants to know which areas in the distribution center are the most effective and straightforward, there's that word again, to implement AI-based software for maximum impact.
Yeah. Typically we start, the first place to look for is picking, right? If you think about a distribution center, the highest ongoing cost is in labor, and that highest ongoing cost is almost always in picking. If you bring a pallet in and store it in a warehouse one time, and it gets a part of 50 orders, well, you put it in once, and now you split it apart 50 times for orders. So you can see how picking ends up being the biggest challenge. That's usually the place to start. It often has the biggest low-hanging fruit as far as optimization and travel goes. But there's, replenishment is probably next on the list as well, if you're doing that, or a typical replenishment model. And if you're not, you're doing more of a random storage, put away is, similar challenges. A lot of times using carts, you're batching put aways, or you should be if you're not already. And those are good opportunities as well.
Thank you. I'm also wondering, to what extent is there an implementation period? I mean, this is an AI system. We often hear the phrase machine learning. To what extent does the system, once implemented, have to take time to quote unquote learn the facility so as to be able to optimize the paths that you talked about?
Great question. So we work in conjunction with the customer to build a digital map of the warehouse. So it starts working out of the box, really, and we use that to refine and improve along the way. So when we use our picking software, the dynamic work optimization, we don't need a learning curve to get up and running. Same thing with our voice recognition engine. We start off with a bootstrap model, and it begins building and learning the user as they start. So there's no voice trainer, like the voice systems of the past. So they're off and running, and it improves over the first couple of days, but really we find really good results right away. Lastly, our dynamic slotting engine, that uses some order history to begin learning, and it improves along the way, but you give us data, we can spit out some good results for you right away. So you don't have to wait for that ROI. We're really trying to chase that rapidly.
Thank you. Question wants to know, how does this optimization we're talking about here differ from the optimization that WMS providers will tell you their systems provide? They promise.
Yeah. We typically just play a lot closer to the warehouse floor than a typical WMS company. A WMS has a lot of things to focus on, right? From inventory management and batch management, and making sure the beans are being counted correctly. So because we're hyper focused on that warehouse worker, that DC worker, and their experience, we tend to find better results from the optimization. We're not seeing in the marketplace a lot of other companies, whether it's WMS or ERP or even robotics that are focusing on travel and the batching challenge the same way we are. That plenty of them are great and effective, of course, but it is our sole focus. And so it's where we shine for sure.
Thank you. Which WMSs and ERPs do you typically work with? Do you consider any systems to be a non-starter for this type of integration?
I'm sure some people would wish they could rule some out, but for the most part, we've integrated with, tier 1 WMSs like Manhattan, SAP. We've integrated with mom and pop shops, homegrown, held together by some guy named Jerry, who they don't let out of a bunker, because if they did, everything would fall apart, right? So really, we have no non-starters. It's really, can we get some idea of orders? Where's the product in location? Where is it associated to? And if we can, dimensional data, that always helps, unit of measure data, but it's really light touch. So really nothing's a non-starter, thankfully. And yeah, like I said, we've kind of integrated with them all at some point in the past.
Mm-hmm. This kind of flows nicely into the next question. This questioner is saying, we just implemented a tier 1 WMS. Is there any way to plug your solution into those? Hope the answer is yes. Or should I just stick with those existing features?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a lot of customers over the years, and more recently say, okay, I spent a couple $1 million on a tier 1 Manhattan implementation, something like that. Not trying to name check Manhattan, or another tier 1, and they're still not getting quite the ROI they were expecting right out of the gate. And they came to Lucas for help. So we absolutely can plug into those. And again, it's because it's our core focus. We can zoom in a little bit more on process and worker movement rather than material movement, I guess, or inventory movement. And so we've definitely been able to add value and up and above what a tier 1 WMS can provide.
Okay. Questioner says, our warehouse is in need of something like this solution, along with a full WMS. Which would you suggest I implement first?
That is a great question. It does depend, I would say, on your environment and your talent for change management. The good thing is it can go either way. It really depends on budgets, timelines and things like that. We've implemented alongside WMS implementations. What that does is that gives the user ability to only learn one system once, right? They learn how to interact with the Lucas system, on the floor, and then the Lucas system interacts with the WMS, and you really reduce some training effort, but you add some, some complexity to the operation, right? Because you're doing two things at once. We've had a number of customers who implemented us before a WMS switchover, and that one was those examples have been really great for us because the users on the floor become invisible to that WMS switchover. A lot of people in the industry have been, around or privy or driven WMS changeovers, and they can be intensely painful for the floor, right? You might have to shut down for a day or days, hopefully not too long, to do that cutover. And then now people have to use new systems and learn new systems on the fly, and maybe you slow roll it in, but there ends up being a lot of clashing there. So we've had customers we were on their homegrown WMS before. Users were using Lucas. They switched out for something like SAP in the background. The users barely notice a difference. They're still using the same commands. They're still interacting with the same system along the way, and that provided a nice buffer for the system for the users. Additionally, kind of extended the life of their ERP because they were able to get some benefits and things out of it before they had to make the WMS switch over, which made them be more focused and more deliberate on what they were looking for in the WMS. They were able to buy less from the WMS because they weren't, reaching for some of these other features, and it really worked out. So, there's a case to be made for either, but I wouldn't let that be a hang up for sure.
So either way, implementation of your solution is not going to cause the need to bring the whole system down while you're implementing. You're not going to have severe amount of downtime while you get this thing going. You can, it's an operation. These are busy operations. They can't pause, right?
Yeah, they're not pausing for us. So yeah, we keep it moving. Training time is very light. It's pretty short, and we do some training, in a test environment for a while and get them up and running pretty quickly. So very quick switchovers. Whether we would do it a whole big bang at once for a warehouse or bring in users or zones at a time, either way is flexible for us.
Great. Questioner says, can this batch optimization work with a goods to person system that doesn't have its own optimization? For instance, select the orders to pick at a station that has common SKUs to improve the hit rate. Assuming, of course, the picking outside of the goods to person would be on Lucas software as well. Is that indeed the case? What do you have to say to this questioner?
Great question. We've had that come up at a few opportunities. We've done an integration and proof of concept with a robotics company. And so we definitely think we can add value here, especially with given our engine and success in production over the years. So one additional benefit we see for both goods to person and non-goods to person or person to goods in a robotic solution is that having a user have their own device and headset, especially in the kind of swarm model, makes it so that they can begin doing tasks before the robot arrives. That applies a little bit less to goods to person, depending on how it's set up, but I think there's still some opportunity there, especially if you don't have the full station set up. You can have users begin to work on their next tasks as things come up and not have to interact with the stations as well. But yeah, the batching software can work either way.
Okay. When batching orders, how do you keep associates from mixing them together? You've still got people in the warehouse. Let us not forget. This person's saying we've got a lot of temp and inexperienced employees at the moment. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's a great, good one as well. Can be tricky sometimes. I mean, there's always opportunities for error, right? So we just want to reduce it as much as we possibly can. Couple of different ways we've done that. So if you're, picturing a batch cart, for a lot of customers, our default would be to print or apply a generic license plate number to each order and use the last 2 or 3 digits of that order number or license plate number as a voice check string. That makes it so they're randomized, so you're not printing numbers on a cart that a user could memorize. They're random each batch, and the user has to voice those 2 digits in to place products into it. This keeps users sorting correctly. Like I said, they're really hard to memorize and mess up. You almost have to read it as you drop items into the bin. And what this does is give users a way to keep their hands and eyes focused on the task, as opposed to having to put something down and then scan a barcode, right, when they put something away, which is a typical method. Or where you have some of the kind of robotic solutions are going towards now using colored totes, and colored totes are nice, but you don't necessarily get the confirmation that the person put it in the right one. So using that kind of voice check string, whether it's a numerical one in a batch cart or on a pallet using an alpha bravo type of paradigm, those can really help reduce those errors, and we see very few issues from customers that have implemented it.
This questioner says, we zone pick everything now to reduce travel time. How does batch picking, like you've shown, work in that type of environment?
Yeah, so they don't have to be mutually exclusive. They sometimes can, and depending on the layout, we might want to make batch zones larger, or we might have room to make them larger because we know we're going to batch pick things using our smart optimization. So you're still going to reduce the travel, so it offsets some of the need to do zones. But environments where you still want to have different zones because of various size requirements or racking requirements, we've used now successfully at a few warehouses this idea of waterfall batch picking, where a user will pick a number of totes and start in one zone, and if totes are finished, they can move on to packing. But then if they're not and they need picks from subsequent zones, they can be dropped off and picked up there. And then so a user in the next zone can pick up those totes, add them to their cart, and ask Jennifer for Jennifer, the voice of the Lucas system, I apologize, to get work and now get an optimized batch around these things I've physically put on a cart. So I can make sure that I'm going to have an optimized pick path and batch around those, and then those totes will continue through the system that way. So we've done that in a number of places as well. So, like I said, they're not mutually exclusive, but, we'll come, on site and work with the client to figure out what the best way to size those zones and figure that out.
Okay. This questioner is saying, how does voice picking work when we have a mostly bilingual workforce? Do all my associates have to learn English to make the system work well?
No, so we support, I think we're up to 35 languages now. I don't think we've implemented all 35, but we're up to 35. And I would say a good 30 to 40% of our American client base has English and Spanish as languages. We have a customer in Ohio who actually has English, Spanish, French, and Arabic. So we can have a multilingual workforce and have users interact with the system. We have some features where we can have users be able to select, what language they want to hear, what language they want to speak, and what language they want to see on the screen independently of each other. So, we've seen some managers or DC managers set up the voice direction and recognition in, say, Spanish, but have the screen still read in English so that they could still help if people got in trouble while they was training. And then we've had some people speak in Spanish, but listen in English in order to improve their English. Like all the different flavors are possible there. So that shouldn't be a barrier. And our recognition engine works with all, like I said, all 35 of those languages. I even had to learn a little bit of Thai when I was out in Thailand, implementing a solution out there. And so my first brush with the Thai language was all in Jennifer. So that was interesting to say the least.
Mm.
Yeah.
And by the way, there are constant references here to voice recognition and direction. I mean, we all know that voice has been with us for many, many years in the warehouse. I'm just wondering, to what extent has it evolved? How much better is it today than the early iterations of that, when there were difficulties in dealing with accents, languages, and the like? Is it much better now?
Yeah, it is light years further along now. If you've been in the industry long enough, you've heard or seen people have to go into a conference room and train their words or phrases for 45 minutes. And when you consider, the labor environment today, where you might be bringing in new temps every day, you can't afford to have them spend an hour training their voice to only be there for the rest of the day and then not come back tomorrow, right? So our engine now has a no training approach. It's still speaker dependent. So the system will get better and build a model based on that user and how they speak from accent and volume. But it's they don't need a trainer to bootstrap the system. It begins learning right away. So it is light years better. We still give users opportunity to record over words if they want to say a word slightly differently, or they have a particularly heavy accent that's hard to get a particular word. You can still record that and use that word-based engine. But our dual recognition engine really is, even in the time I've been at Lucas, which is 6 years now, it is vastly improved.
Well, unfortunately, I have to say that we are just about out of time. We do have time for one final question. So here it is, Kyle. In an environment that continues to be very volatile, how can I be sure that I'm balancing the risk of the investment with the benefits of rapid ROI and also offer flexibility and growth potential in my facility?
Well, that's a big ask, Bob. Thanks for that.
Sorry.
Great question. I would say, first and foremost, ask yourself where you are, what you have, when you're doing that self-assessment. But in addition, ask yourself where your business was, pre-pandemic, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and it's probably a lot different, right? So think about that and incorporate that in your analysis and use that to do some scenario planning. So when you're designing a solution, what happens if our outbound mix shifts significantly, right, in the next 5 years? What if we completely shift to how we're shipping out orders? Does the solution I'm looking at purchasing support that? Or am I going to have to rip out miles of conveyor or, worst case, build a brand new DC? So I would definitely think about that as a first step and look to flexible solutions that can grow and change along with you, because your business likely will not be the same a few years from now.
Great. Well, for all of the attention being paid to warehouse hardware, because it's something you can actually see and it's super impressive, it's interesting that indeed software does seem to be the answer, or at least a key part of the solution to some of the issues and challenges that warehouses are facing today. Kyle, thank you so much for that. And by the way, just those steps that you just recommended, our audience would like to see more information and more research on that topic, here's an ebook. Here's a URL for an ebook from Lucas. From Lucas. It'll tell you a little bit more about it. You don't have to scramble that and write that down right now. This information will be provided to all attendees who attended today. So anyway, Kyle, Franklin, I want to thank you again for a great presentation. I want to thank our audience for your attendance and your great questions as well. It's been a real enlightening hour as far as I'm concerned. Thanks to everybody again. Everybody, stay well.